Do you have quorum? We do. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting tonight, the third meeting of fiscal 26. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable laws. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at Memorial Hall inside the Town Hall at 34 West Main Street, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the following Zoom link. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted above. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28 and Charter Channel 192 or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. And I look forward to discussing all of our items tonight. So, not seeing anybody online or in person for public comment, I believe we can press forward to the next item. I apologize for the late email, but everybody should have just gotten the updated community dashboard PDF. I just sent it right before the meeting kicked off.
It's the same as what was before, correct?
I have not had a chance myself to look at it
Okay.
yet, but I think maybe Christy could probably let us know. So, Christy, I know you wanted to make some comments and enter the discussion.
Hi, I'm Christy Williams, the town manager. I'm not sure what the first draft was of the benchmark communities. I think it's probably pretty similar. One of the things, I should back up. So right now we have a set of data dashboard, we call them data dashboard communities. That list was established back in 2018, and that was the result of the finance team, but so people from the school and the town coming together to identify some communities that were similar. In recent years, I think we've gotten some questions about those communities, how they were chosen, why they were chosen, and then just some questions about whether or not they're the right communities to be using going forward. So the way that we use them, we show them at town meeting. We show how we compare to other communities financially. We also use them when we do collective bargaining. So we look at those communities as our comparables, and we identify, as an example, what those communities are paying their police, fire, DPW. And then we also use them when we did our recent update to the non-union compensation plan. So we do use them quite a bit. One of the things that we really identified as something that we can improve on in this next round, as we were looking at our benchmark communities, was providing some sort of narrative document. There's really no narrative currently around the data dashboard communities or around the methodology of how they were chosen. So working with the finance team, we created this new list of benchmark communities based on the methodology that's described within the narrative document. But essentially we looked at all Massachusetts communities with populations between 10,000 and 40,000, and we identified 15 indicators that we felt were indicators of a town's financial health or how they prioritize their spending. And so we gave different weights to these different indicators, and that might be one of the changes that you might see in your new version. When we brought this to the select board, they asked that we add some more information about the scoring within the narrative document, and then we also added the weighting to the table. But we identified certain weights based on how important we thought they were to Westborough. So how far they are, population, and then other things like the percent of residential property, whether or not they have a split tax rate. And then in looking at how the different communities might spend money, looking at how much is spent on public safety versus education, public works, etc. So the narrative document, out of a possible 205 points, the methodology resulted in 15 communities that had an overall rating between 130 and 159. And so that list of communities is within the document. There are 4 that exist currently on our data dashboard. Communities, that's Hopkinton, Northborough, Reading, and Westford. There's also a section within the narrative that speaks to our surrounding communities, because we did have a lot of discussion about whether or not all of our surrounding communities should be on the list, if they should be the list, and looking at those communities and how the financial indicators were applied. It didn't always make sense. So one example is Upton was not even within the number of communities that we applied the indicators to, because they have a population of less than 10,000. So we tried to have a section just identifying some of the things that were distinctly different about some of our abutting communities, and also being clear about where they fell on that list, or the scoring. And then one of the things that we talk about with our data dashboard communities that we currently have, we really appreciate when people come and they use our data dashboard communities, and then we sort of say, oh, but this community is actually like not a great indicator because it's a little bit different this way. So we created a section where we were trying to give a little more information about communities that might be an outlier if you looked at certain things. So one example is dispatch. So in Westborough, the dispatch budget is within the fire department, so that's something that's really important to understand. That is not true for any of the other communities. It's actually not true. I don't think it's true for any community. The Holliston and Littleton, which are now on our benchmark list, have call fire departments. So that's another example of something that we would want to pay attention to if we were comparing fire department budgets or other things related to the department. Recreation, we note who has a community center and who has a golf course. And then water and sewer, we note who's part of the Mass Water Resource Authority, and just how those are applied. So just that particular section might grow if we are finding that there are other nuances that we were not aware of, but this was sent out to all of the departments as well as the school department, asking to help us identify some of those things for this first round of this document. And then we give the history, which I just went through, with a recommendation that we review this list every 5 years using the same methodology. So that way, if certain things change in other communities or change with Westborough, then we would use a similar methodology to update the list. So also probably new in this document is that first appendix. And it's really just to show the scoring bands of each of the indicators. You saw that a little bit probably in your last document. This is more organized. And then the last piece of what you have is an Appendix B, which just shows what the scores were for every community that we looked at for each of the indicators. So I did bring this to the select board. They made some suggestions about the document. They had an interest in the school committee and the finance committee weighing in prior to them taking any sort of vote. The school committee received the same presentation, I think on the first day of school, so at the end of August. And they took a vote to support the current list, just noting that we talked about the need for potentially having to add some more information to that outlier category. And certainly if we're finding that this isn't working, that there could be further discussion. So the select board will talk about this tomorrow evening, but wanted to present it to you tonight, looking for a vote of essentially concurrence. I think something to note is that the last list did not go through the same process. It just sort of came out as the list, but happy to share it and help people understand it before we start using it. But hoping to use it for the fiscal 27. So the first time we would use it would be at the budget summit at the end of this month.
Christy, would it be possible for you to include in your narrative which towns have regional school districts versus districts like ours that are not regional? Because that usually makes a huge difference in how much they're reimbursed in some of their decisions.
Yep, we could add that.
And also because I was wondering how you're going to handle Northborough without Southborough. You know, like, does that mean it gets Algonquin or it doesn't get Algonquin?
So I had a couple of points. First of all, I mean, this is a few pages document, like a 3 pages document, but I'm sure there's a lot of effort that has been put in terms of coming up to this, along with the factors. I mean, there could be so many factors if you go to the website. So great job. I want to first
Sean did a lot of that.
absolutely appreciate, like, it's not easy if you come up with the, you know, what are the factors that could be involved. This is amazing. My only, I think, observation here has been, and please correct me if I'm, it's my oversight, but I didn't see not Hopkinton, Southborough here. I feel like some of the adjoining towns, even if we do not mention, will be in the back of residents' mind if those towns, you know, and even if they are not there in this benchmark communities, they will still say, oh, Southborough has this or that. My only comment here would be that it would be good to just put out those adjoining towns just to say why they did not make it as well, so that we have a future reference that this is why they were not chosen, even though they are adjoining. Because I'm pretty sure even if we have done as much effort as you guys have into this, there will still be questions asked, like some of those adjoining towns, like, you know, Southborough, why they are, like, they have this and we have not. So it would be good to just keep some kind of side note of that as well.
So, so we do have that one paragraph under the bulleted list of towns, which speaks to the abutting towns, with sort of a general statement that it's average single-family value, percentage of residential tax base, population, and expenditures and fixed costs that are driving them out of the range. Are you looking for each one to be sort of clearly identified as how it's
The ones which are at
things
least
that are
adjoining
pushing it?
Westborough, you know, it would be good to just keep that.
Because it's in the, I'm sorry, it's in the Appendix B, right? So it shows like Southborough has 107 points.
Right.
But they missed, there's a big disconnect in per capita income, right? The average home value, that's kind of like the big gaps with
Right.
Southborough.
Right, and I think Southborough also the residential tax base.
Yeah. But to Beth's points, then, how does the school committee use Northborough when, you know, they've got Algonquin?
That actually wasn't raised as a concern by the school committee, and I know that I believe in our previous list, we had some regional schools, so I don't think that that's come up yet, but that's a good point to raise.
And to your point too, people are always looking at adjacent towns, right? So
Yeah.
it's going to be Southborough, Northborough, Grafton, Shrewsbury.
So if you
Always.
look at page,
Always,
Yeah.
regardless you put whatever, they will compare it.
Yeah,
So.
like you put the appendix out there and it still is going to be.
but if you
It's
look
gonna be
if you
asked.
look at that paragraph where we speak to the abutting towns specifically,
Yeah.
you're looking for more detail than that? Is that what you're?
Maybe the key
are.
driver behind each one.
Some narrative, I mean, if you've seen me talk about it, narrative always works better than any numbers that we put across. Somehow people just
Okay.
overlook the numbers versus narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a general, because when I read this earlier, it's just kind of a general statement, general blanket statement that addresses those 3 towns. So maybe a little bit more specifics.
Yeah.
The transparency is
Right.
excellent. I think it's just, you
Yeah.
know, how to, maybe, you know, so you don't run into issues up front and you have to explain it every time.
Sure. Yep.
So what you're saying is people are more likely to ask about Grafton or Shrewsbury than they are some random town like Ware or something
Or
that's
Walpole or-
not adjacent.
Sure.
Yeah, it's probably true.
Right.
I wonder if in the appendix, if you highlight the towns that fell off the list with the italics or something too. I didn't look and see whether you did that, but there's obviously 10 towns that fell off, and it's interesting what their scores would have been. But that may be just done in the appendix, I think.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't done that, but we could do that easily.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, just John Steinberg, Finance Director, with regard to the regional school districts, I tried to take a look at it by using percent of, the school spending as a percent of the overall budget. So that absorbs a little bit because it's the total spending of the town versus just looking at a per pupil or some other factor that's going to take that out of the equation. When we're looking at this, considering affordability of the town, right? What's the expenditure side of that math? So it doesn't remove that as a factor. Of course, it's a factor, but it tries to give some equity in the same way that would create an outlier of a thing versus the fire department issue or many other issues. So when you look at one of the 16 different factors that were considered, that is one way to sort of reduce that impact comparatively versus looking at other criteria.
I want to say that I think that the school district, though, has to present the per student expenditure, and when they're a regional school district, they are spending at a different rate because the state is reimbursing at a higher rate.
Well, that's part of why state aid is in there also. So state aid takes that into account a little bit. We tried to move away from a per pupil because we're talking about an overall general affordability of the town. So we have a lot more apartments, right? And so that can impact our student population. So rather than get into the nitty gritty, we're really focusing on the affordability for the overall town. So we're not getting into that overall discussion of the school system, the school system, the school system. Let's talk about the spending. Let's talk about how affordable it is and focus on those criteria for comparison.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When we were identifying the indicators, we were trying to find ones that would balance each other. But I think it's the additional information, and I've noted 3 different things that we could add to this, and I think it's easy enough to add to the document.
Yeah, it's just providing more context, so when you go to read it, you don't keep asking the same questions in your mind.
Sure.
But it's a good point, from an affordability standpoint, these are new drivers that you're looking at, as opposed to kind of like the standard or old ones.
Yeah, I think the old list, some of what was taken into account in development of that list was performance indicators. This we focus purely on financial indicators.
That's a good differentiation.
I think that should be stated as a sentence somewhere in your presentation as well. Because I care about performance. So, I was looking at how do these schools compare as in terms of graduation rates or in terms of SATs or in terms of, it's an overall picture.
Yeah, but if you pick your comparison towns based on performance, you're perhaps doing a self-fulfilling prophecy of all high-performing towns, say, versus if you do it on the financial and how much it costs, seems like you're doing your efficiency, because the schools can still present against these towns where they fit in quality, or the fire department can, or whoever, but you're not picking the towns necessarily on towns that have the highest SAT scores or something.
And it would be almost impossible to
keep that up anyway.
To pick the towns based on performance, because you would have to look at every single department and use the performance indicators and then identify towns that were comparable throughout all departments.
So, I just really applaud the idea of having a document that clearly states how they were derived. People can haggle or argue about, well, I would have given this 15 points instead of 10 or whatever. But the reality is, for the last 5-6 years, whatever it's been, maybe more, right? 8, that we had the 14 towns. We have certain legends of how they were invented, a lot of complaints about how certain towns were there. At least here, you got a good list of comparables, and you have a reason in how they're picked. And like you said, in 5 years, someone can relook at it and say, well, this is what people value more or less or something. But the fact that it's defined this way, it seems less that cherry picking, so to speak.
I like that it's defined.
Yeah, very good. Very nice job.
So in the first, your first paragraph under purpose, you you're really clear about, right, it's being used for really for financial performance perspective. But maybe in there you say it's not related to, well, it's more around affordability versus effectiveness. Isn't that what you're looking at?
Yeah, it's not measuring performance.
Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't say that. It says what it is, but it doesn't say what it isn't. In historically, was it performance-based?
I know that
Yes.
I know that was part of the discussion, but financial was also part of the discussion, and I think that the difficulty is when you try to do both at
Meld
the
the
same
two,
time,
it doesn't work.
It's not, I think that's why we're seeing this list is yielding like a pretty different list of communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would 4 out of 14, that's
Yeah.
surprising.
Andrew?
So the nature of system dynamics is that with this new thing being very transparent, two things are going to happen. Number one, it's new, so many more people are going to look at it. And number two, it's so transparent. There will be some really great feedback from sources you don't expect. So I applaud the idea of looking at this every 5 years. I would caveat that by saying in this, the newest year with the newest visibility and all the great work that's been done, and the fact that more eyes and ideas may be coming, that you may want to think about reevaluating this next year before you hit a 5-year cycle. Just food for thought. Just because I really do expect there's some great minds in this town that are going to look at this, and again, because it's so transparent, it's going to have opportunity for great feedback. So that was one thought that I had. The other is that we've used the word factor here many, many times, and I realize the word factor appears in a number of these tables in Appendix A, and I don't quite understand how it's being defined. I'm sure I could math it on my own time, but I wonder if we could define what factor means in Appendix A as it applies.
Sure. I just want to speak to your first
Sure.
point. So I completely agree with you that we'll probably get a lot of people taking a look at this because we haven't had it before and it's new. I think one of the things that we want to be really careful about, and I'm sure you all agree, is sort of redoing the list. It really, I guess it depends on what's not working or what we're identifying. And I know that you understand. I just wanted to say that because that sort of came up we talked a little bit about that also at the school committee level. So, John, do you want to speak to factor or you want me to?
The factor is, the
Yeah.
multiplier.
Oh, go ahead.
That's all right. It's essentially, I think, a multiplier as you go out,
Yeah.
where in different categories, it sort of, I don't want to say it means different things, but depending on whether you're using multiplier as a percentage or, because, when you determine Westborough and you have to go out in different directions, right? How do you go out equally and weight it in different categories using different things?
So would the word weight work instead of factor?
No, because the weighting is something different.
I think maybe if we just put something in there that defined it,
Yeah,
I
that's the
think that would be added
Yeah.
in the narrative. I think would be a good thing just to describe how that column is being used. I
Right.
think that would be good.
So just as not looking at this, like, as somebody who's really dug into it, higher numbers are good for the scoring, yet it appears that the further you are from the median, the higher the number is, which would seem to be counterproductive to the scoring, but I think that's not what the factor is being used for. So I think just in the interests of fantastic transparency, helping educate those who might look at this to figure out how it factors in.
Yeah, so just to throw one out, if you look at percent of residential property, when you get out to the 1.2, right, you're looking at a 20% variance from where Westborough is at 70.35. I know it says 84.42, so it's not a direct correlation of 20 percentage points against that, but that's how, if you go out within 5%, within 10%, 15%, 20%.
That makes sense. I don't understand how that applies to population though, because at 5,500, 11,000.
Right, exactly, and that's why it's a multiple of 5,000. That's why the factor is, a little bit different.
But I think
Or
we can
shouldn't
add
say
a
that.
definition section
Yeah.
that includes
Yeah.
factor, score, weights.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
we'll
I-
identify
yeah,
some other
grateful.
things.
Yeah, and the factor's interesting because as you go lower, it's still considered a multiple, but it's not
Right,
really.
in the
it's
other
a-
way,
It
right.
really should be 0.8
Right.
something, but then people would
Right.
say it's not the same in both directions or something.
Right.
I don't,
And just to point out.
I think if
on-
you define it, you'd be okay, probably.
On page 1, under methodology, it does speak to the affordability, financial health and affordability. These indicators are not intended to indicate performance. So it does say right on
okay.
page 1, maybe it
Yeah.
should speak to it a little bit in the purpose, but it is right there.
Performance is not a factor, but not that kind of factor, it's a different kind of factor.
Can I just jump in a little bit on the
Yeah.
indicators? How were the weightings determined?
You can get it if you want. So we actually came up with this kind of methodology, not the indicators, but the methodology from a previous study that we had done for us by an outside consultant, and they used these different sort of scoring or weighting. So and actually the 5, 10, 15, 20 were how they used it. So that particular piece is where we grabbed that from. So as we were looking at financial indicators, we looked at it as a full finance team and identified things that we thought were really important as we looked at comparable communities. And then from there, John applied weights that he then brought back, and then we went through them. So obviously the lower the weight, I guess sort of less important, or we felt was creating a less comparable point. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, and some of that, as with other things, it was the impact on affordability. Split rate versus single rate. So it's when you're considering that and what's their impact on affordability and how much can you weigh that relative to others. Like, you don't want to necessarily get into determining whose priorities are which, or whose opinion says, well, okay, well, the school percent of spending should be weighed more than DPW or public safety or general government, right? So it's to try to put some objectivity into that where you're not digging in. I mean, we did look at how those played and how they compared to try to develop some sort of equity in how it impacts with affordability.
And we gave the lower weights to things that the town as a whole sort of had more control over, as opposed to things that we have less control over. So when you look at the percentage of total budget for each of those, because that's indicative of the town's past or current behavior, it was weighted lower, because certainly those things could change based on a number of factors, as opposed to our population or our average single family values, which are more of a calculation we have less control over.
I think it was good that the distance, because people have talked about proximate towns, that was a high-rated
That
one.
was one we talked about a lot.
And I participated, I think, in the first conversation of this on the finance team, and then Jane's been at the others, but those ideas were kicked around with that group.
Yeah, I think all the indicators are, I think some are according to the weighting. I agree, some are more important than others. I guess my concern is how narrow the range is between the lowest weighting and the greatest weighting. Part of what I would look at a dashboard, and I understand what it says at the top, but when I'm looking at a dashboard, I'm thinking, what are the comparable communities that are similarly resourced to finance the same types of activities, and how are they spending that money? And in my mind, that would greatly favor things. What is the tax base? What's the population, the per capita income? But the per capita is not even at the top of the range. It's in the middle.
Per capita, for example, our population, again, you get into the number of apartments that we have, right? And so that gets pulled in a lot of different ways when you're considering that, because it's both, percent of residential versus commercial, it's single rate versus split rate, it's average single family. So some of what you're describing comes from a lot of different places. So it's adding on to it. You take state aid, for example, when you talk about affordability, those that get a lot more state aid or less comparable relative to affordability. Those get a lot less, same thing. And so that's really speaking to the affordability aspect versus the expenditure side of that. You know, so I think one of the things to bear in mind is the aggregate that comes in exactly what you're describing. You know, where are those resources coming from? And that adds up from a lot of different factors relative to affordability and finances.
So, completely following you there. I don't believe a valuable discussion around right now would come from that without being able to sit down with hard numbers and
Yep.
and discuss it. That being said, why wouldn't we just use a tax-based number then?
What do you mean by
Everything
tax-based
you just
number?
said would go into what's the resourced number. You just said, you know, we have all these different factors that add up to how much comes in, correct?
Because it's too broad, right? There's so many factors that go into that tax-based number that you just described. You know, when you consider total values versus commercial versus residential, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. So while it'd be great to simplify it like that, you really can't, because no two communities are going to put those pieces together in a way that could consolidate it and clean it up. That's why we have 16 different things. That's like saying,
Oh,
well,
I'm
let's-
not talking about consolidating all the indicators. I'm talking about, instead of talking about a few of them, like per capita income, for example, you could look at what's the town's resourced budget, what's the tax base, and look at similarly situated communities.
Right, but
using
like I
that.
said, the number of rental units we have plays into what our per capita is, right? And so that is hard to find another community that has that type of impact, the residential impact, based upon the property mix.
But wouldn't that go to the affordability aspect you were just discussing?
Well, but it reduces our per capita because, you know, and so that makes that a difficult criteria to really dwell on if you look at the average income versus the per capita income. You know, again, a lot of different factors going into there. That's why you're taking that away in different places. You know, and I think percent of property value type is a big one. You know, we've talked a lot about that over time, and that impacts affordability.
So are we looking to make a motion to accept in principle the framework of the benchmark communities? Is that, would that carry the weight of what you're looking for from this group?
Yeah, we're looking for a vote of concurrence essentially, because when we use this list, we want it to be meaningful to the select board, the school committee, and this committee.
Sorry, just one last question, if you don't mind. And I know you already started about it, and I feel like as if I'm going to start for the first one, as the first one. Was the borrowing considered as part of this whole factors, like how much is the borrowing capacity left, or how much is the borrowing already done? What is the borrowing on each of the towns, you know, that has been done as a factor of their budgets or as percentages?
What do you got?
Borrowing,
Borrowing.
Oh,
loan, or
We do
outstanding
have-
debt or something?
we do. Go ahead. We do have fixed costs as a piece of that, which would
So
include
that fixed
debt.
cost.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but capacity was not, borrowing capacity was not considered.
okay, okay.
Because there are other communities that do debt exclusions or over, you know, to do that borrowing. There's other mechanisms that can be had
Sure.
relative to that. I mean, most all of these communities are far enough under their levy ceiling that they would be able to borrow if they wanted to. It would just be, what's the mechanism and how much do they have and
Okay.
which way do they have to vote?
But I think that's it's a good data point once I think you have the list of communities to look at how other communities that are comparable are using their debt, right?
On
Or
their debt,
what their
yeah.
debt budget looks like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's why those were, again, weighted lower, because those are the result of past behavior, these percentages of the budget.
Okay.
Not saying they're good or bad, they're just the result of decisions that the town has made over time.
So does the fixed cost include also, sometimes we lump in things like insurance and other things into fixed costs. Was that
typically-
included here, or was that just a borrowing?
The way that DLS defines it typically includes insurance, retirement, debt.
Okay, so in our comparison, that number actually
Yeah.
includes those three as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
just like we do.
Right.
Thank you.
So I think I'm going back to your original point too on these key indicators. Are they really, you're going to get a lot of feedback, and so are they really the ones that you want to use on a continuum basis? Because it's the first year out, so how do you know these are the right ones? You've used it from a different source, but is there an opportunity to reevaluate them and to just see, use anytime you create change, right? There's always a period of time where you got to try to use the data and see if it is the right data. Is it giving you the answers that you're looking for to help guide you in your processes? So I think you need to have some fluidity in here built in.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's why we weren't really looking for votes of approval necessarily, because I think it is a living document. That being said, I would caution, and again, I think we would all agree, sort of feeling like the list could be
Changes
better
every year.
or could show things better. We don't want to be touching it every year because we don't sort of like the story it's telling, because it's possible we won't. And one of the questions we were asked at school committee was, have we used this, have we put it into a slide or into a graph? And we haven't. We feel like these indicators are the right indicators for financial health, and we want to show what we've shown before. And the first preview of that for all of us will be at the budget summit to see, how we compare.
Yeah, I think fundamentally there is no right list of conditions that is absolutely definitively right. I think that the first year, what you would be looking for is a measure of egregiousness, which is, oh my God, there's a variable here that we've chosen that is wildly out of sync with what the expected results are. That would be good reason to say, for first round, we want to change it maybe going forward. But barring egregiousness as a barometer, I think this is a good way that needs to get some a use under it to see how well it applies and how well it weathers, a couple of years before we would.
Yeah, and you might find some are definitely useful, and others that might be redundant, or things change and you don't need that indicator anymore. So
Yeah, these are not perfect circles on a Venn diagram. There is definitely overlap here, and that's why there's no perfect answer.
I will say, and this is purely anecdotal, I think some of the communities on our current list that we've been most criticized about did not make it onto this list, and that was not intentional. It just is how, using these indicators, some of those communities that I think people were questioning fell off the list.
So if we support using it for this budget cycle, does that suffice what you need, or?
I think it's just, concurrence with the list. I think if you're feeling like when we're going through the process that you have concerns, you can always bring things like that to me, but probably could bring it to your chair, and then we would talk about it again at the finance team meeting. So I think everyone agrees that this is sort of living, and we have to keep looking at it.
Yeah, and keep refining it, or just keep evaluating it.
Yeah.
Do you want to try that motion again, Andrew, or did you already make it? Because I'll second it if you already made it. But
I will recommend that we, as a committee, concur with the current framework for the benchmark communities, and look forward to seeing how this is evaluated going forward.
Leslie, second.
We have to do roll call.
Yep.
Sorry.
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes?
Brandt, yes.
Shimada abstain.
Leslie, yes.
O'Day, yes.
All right, that's
For the record, Bradley made the recommendation. Sorry. I
Yeah.
forgot to say that.
what is that? 8, 7, 7, 8, 0,
There's
601.
seven. There's 7 of us
8,
total.
01,
here.
701.
It's 601.
601.
601.
3.
There's
Seven.
only 7 of us here.
Oh, yeah. Who are we missing? Jane and who?
There's,
Seven.
Oh, there's not. Yep, Saroja. Okay.
That was easy.
Thank you.
Great work.
A
Thank
lot
you.
of efforts, yep.
Are you expecting another presentation from us?
I don't think so.
No?
At some point,
Oh, you mean at all?
the warrant
Yeah,
articles.
ever.
Yeah, no, before the, at some point, there's
Before
a bunch
the-
of warrant
yeah, I was gonna
articles you're
say,
on the
yeah.
hook for.
We had talked to Jane about just doing sort of an overview, but I know I didn't see it on the agenda, and I know she's not here, so we can come back.
Overview of,
Like budget process.
Oh, okay.
Not that we have FY27 numbers at this point, but so that's fine. We can just
Yeah, that might be good too, because I can only imagine Saroja and Jane might have comments and questions on this as well, so.
Okay, sure.
I think the idea was having a little bit of conversation before the budget summit.
Yeah,
on
so
that
she had talked to
topic,
John and
but
I about a
yeah.
presentation.
Yeah.
So it's ready
Okay.
when you all are.
Oh, yeah, she mentioned that, and she was going to check on the date when you would be
Okay.
available to come.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. Unfortunately,
Thank you
she's not
both.
here today.
I know.
Last
Thank you.
minute.
What is the special?
All right.
Oh, can I ask John something while he's here? John, can we get last
I
year's?
sent them to Jane.
Oh, okay. So we've gotten them, we just haven't gotten them yet.
Oh, the actuals?
Very good.
You just don't have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that the actuals?
Yes,
Yeah,
from fiscal 25.
yeah.
Josh, is it okay if I make one comment?
Sure.
Okay. Just for your warrants, I know you're going to go through the warrant tonight. Yesterday, I was at the Westborough for Life event, and I passed out a version 2, which I have not sent out. But just for you all to know, version 2, the only difference was the correction of the date. Because on the first version, it had Monday, October 21st, and it should have said Tuesday. So if you see a version 2 floating around, that's the only difference.
So we can go right to 3.
Yeah, so we'll probably just, I mean, I can send it to you, but that's the only difference. It's Tuesday, October 21st. So just wanted you to know. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
That's a good kind of change, not 9 new articles.
Can only imagine. How do we normally go through this, Walter?
Oh, what's next?
Yeah, it's the warrant.
Oh, STM discussion. I mean, I suggested putting it on in case there were any articles that wanted preliminary
people to
discussion
come.
or people to talk
Yeah.
about getting people in or whatever. I just generally start putting there. Otherwise, if it's not on the agenda, it's sort of off topic. So I haven't. The fact that I don't have anything specific in mind for that.
I'm just gonna scroll through. I mean, does anybody have anything off the top of their head that they want to bring somebody in to hear about? I mean,
From the warrant articles?
So I was going to cover this under liaisons, but basically I've contacted the Affordable Housing Trust, who have 3 articles on the warrant, and Alan Edinburgh, the chair, has agreed to come next Monday, the 15th.
The 15th. Yep.
So we'll be meeting on the 15th with them here, which covers those 3.
It's not on the warrant yet, but and this might be part of the liaison report, but part of the rec committee. They're going to get proposals in another round of proposals for the cost for the pool. So they're considering very strongly bringing a warrant about that. No details at this point because it's not proposed until October. But I just want to give you a heads up that that's coming. So.
Yeah, that was the thought, that they only got 1 bid last time, and they thought in the fall they might get better bids because it's
Yeah.
not pool opening season, it's pool closed down, but you could do the work in the winter because it's indoors.
Yeah,
Right.
and there was some concerns about the numbers on the bid as well. It wasn't in line with what they were expecting. So.
And this would be a similar scope of work as the last time we saw that, yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Well, I think we can probably let this go till, I don't know, will we have a meeting on Thursday? I think we had earmarked one.
We did, but I don't,
Other
without a
than this.
guest or a
Yeah.
specific item, and Jane
Yeah,
not
let me-
here, I would suggest we probably just go to Monday and
probably
then
just go to
schedule
Monday.
everything we want for Monday and try and cram more into that one.
Sounds
And the
good.
trust will take a good half hour plus or something, because they got 3 articles to.
Is
Cover.
somebody owning the spreadsheet? Because I know that you guys are looking for help, so has anybody offered to step with a spreadsheet for tracking warrant articles?
I started one,
Oh,
but I didn't know whether they wanted to do it themselves yet or, but anyway.
I think you just.
I
volunteered,
started
so-
one based on.
We'll take
Route
all the
1.
help we can get.
Okay, anyway, I started a spreadsheet based on the version 1 warrant articles.
I know I won't turn it down, and
All right.
I'm not going to speak for Jane, but
Make a motion for Walter to be doing the spreadsheet.
I was actually doing them before I was chair, after, was it Paul Hugel, I think, was doing them, and then he left, so I think I inherited them then. They're kind of
And-
fun to do. You know, especially fall town meeting, which has, it's one sheet. The annual gets a little complicated with all the different lines and the budget lines and the revotes and.
It's a pretty beefy fall
Yeah.
towns meetings as well.
well, if nobody has anything on the warrant right now, we can always do it via email. If somebody has something they want to bring somebody in for, then let us know. But I also know that the minutes just went out earlier this afternoon, or sorry, late this afternoon, early this evening. But we can always push those till Monday if people have not had an opportunity to read them.
I have not, but that
Yeah.
was my preference if we may.
Yeah.
Okay. Not just for me.
Yeah, no, agreed. Monday,
Yeah.
give us a chance to read through it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any liaison reports? Not everybody all at once?
I got one.
Show
Because
off.
it's been, yeah, I'm a show off. I got my notes. And now I take notes during the library meeting so I can tell you guys. August 26th, we had our monthly library meeting. And the project's sort of getting into its routine and metrics. There's a weekly meeting with a subcommittee that I don't attend. But it's the librarians and then 2 or 3 of the building committee that meet with the builder and our owner's project manager to go over sort of weekly sort of things in a little more details. But then we get a summary at our meeting. So where we're at right now is removal of ductwork and asbestos abatement kind of done. The fence is up, the sign is up. On the masonry, they've removed the material, so they're ready for pointing, which is adding the cement back in. HVAC demo is done, plumbing demo is done, and wallpaper removal is done, and there's a little minor repair to one wall because of that. The look ahead for the 3 weeks was further abatement, which translates to asbestos or other materials as needed, pointing masonry. And we're going to jump into this new routine of our update from the builders come on. They create it the first week of the month, and their bill basically then as well. They provide it. Any potential change orders, and then that comes up at our meeting, which we've moved to, I think, the 3rd Tuesday instead of the 4th Tuesday, so that we're more in sync with when this process works. One larger item that will happen is at some point the street will have to get torn up to put in a bigger water pipe. And so that'll have some impact, but it'll be well publicized. They're looking at the trees. One of the trees may come down that's not in good shape at the corner by the church.
May I ask, was the water pipe expected, or is this?
Yeah,
New? Okay.
they're adding multiple more bathrooms. As far as I recall, it's not unexpected, it's just
Not change
coming
the
up.
scope, change of cost or anything,
No.
because that can get expensive quick. Thank you.
But I'll learn more about it, I guess, at the next meeting too. Skylight that they discovered still being investigated for what it would cost. And window abatement's going on right now. Some of the windows will be either removed and filled in with plywood to be worked on or worked on in place. I've seen them working on in place. So that's it for right now.
Thank you.
I introduced myself to all my liaison groups and said I'm available.
Great.
I didn't get any feedback, but, I mean, they all said, great, looking forward to working with you.
That's good. Not, they didn't run away screaming or
No,
something.
they didn't, no,
Okay.
and they didn't pile any stuff all over me yet, so,
Very good.
yeah. And Beth and I have a meeting with the school committee in a week, so that'll be a good introduction.
Excellent.
Rec committee meeting, so I mentioned the pool, the dog park has been well received, and that's positive. For some strange reason, people keep tying up bags of dog remains on the fences instead of putting them in
Oh my
the
God.
trash can, because you just never can expect people, can you? Just
They don't know where the
But-
trash cans are, or they?
Oh, there's
or
a
is
trash
it-
can there. In fact,
Yeah.
they're going through we have, one of those
That's
silent
odd.
indicators of the success of the project is they're going through the bags very, very quickly, so people are using it. It's a positive sign, and that's good news.
Is that
Uh,
like putting locks on a bridge, you know? with people put their hands-
You know, I made that same joke, actually.
Uh-oh, we're thinking alike.
But, so that was positive. There was some discussion about the golf building. In as much as there didn't seem to be any more communication about what's happening with funding or next steps for that. So that was something I was gonna try and figure out who we're liaisoning with here, or who the liaison is for a municipal building that's responsible for that. And I tried to look for the liaison meeting before this. But ideally, we can try and figure out what's happening with that building, because I think the funding, like, that's the side. And they're beginning their research for the capital project for the golf course for 2026. They continue to expand upon their revolving accounts, so this isn't something that they're expecting to hit. At least from their capital planning, they're not expecting to hit the town, because it's being really well run and it's been a success, and that's a very good thing for our town. Now, whether or not the town should be overseeing a golf course is another conversation I have, but from the way it's being run, it's a solid positive, self-sustaining positive. That's good.
Beth's looking for you.
Oh. Beth?
Unmute?
I think you're muted, Beth.
So sorry about that. So I noticed that when Westborough Rec sent out its brochure, golf lessons are being offered in Northborough at Jupiter, and I'm wondering why we're not using Westborough. That just seemed really odd to me.
I do know that we are offering, I don't know what you're referring to in particular, and feel free to reach out to me offline, and I'll send the note to Jen, and of course, share it with the rest of the committee. But I do know that the golf course here is being used for the school, the high school, for lessons, for all kinds of things.
Yeah, it was used for the kids' programs, because they blocked off a few of the holes several times during the week.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So I'm not sure what she's referring to.
the
on how
adult,
it's been
I know
done.
the adult lessons are at Juniper, through their,
Yeah, that's what I'm
through their
referring to.
program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you're hitting the ball, hundreds of yards. There's nothing you can do at Westborough to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what they do is they block off the 8th and 9th holes and let the kids play through there and practice through there during the summer camps that are here in Westborough.
Okay.
So it's a joint effort between here and Northborough.
So if you did have any questions, Beth, then by all means, send them my way, and I'll make sure they get in front of Jen and the golf pro. But I think Terry's.
Only reason why I know, because my tea times work around them.
Resident expert.
Yeah, pretty much. If only the handicap would prove that.
Okay.
Thank you.
If it's a joint program with Northborough, I'm fine. It just seemed weird
Yeah,
that, we have a golf course and people are going to Northborough.
yeah. No, they use it extensively, I can tell you. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, because,
No.
Juniper is huge.
I
Did
did
reach
reach
out
out
to
to
courses,
DPW.
two
they had
18-hole
no
courses.
updates.
Well, they have a training center,
Ah, okay.
yeah.
Good to
That's
know.
fine. That makes sense.
They run classes all. summer long.
Only other thing to mention is the Affordable Housing Trust, I think, has a meeting this week ahead of our meeting, so I assume that's why they wanted to delay to fully finish up their articles and be ready. So I think that's on
Are
Thursday
they,
or
do we
something.
anticipate they're gonna send anything material-wise, or?
I can ask, like ahead of time, sometimes nice, or at least get the slides. So I'll ask them.
Excellent, appreciate it. We covered a little bit of the future. I know we, last meeting, talked about a number of meetings coming up. We're likely gonna forego this Thursday. We'll be in touch for Monday, with the Affordable Housing Trust. And does anybody else have any other items they wanna add?
Well, do we normally have every representative come here, or is it just the select ones? How do we determine? For
As
the
far
warrant
as-
articles.
Warrant articles.
So, anybody, well, I'll let Walter talk
Okay,
to
so-
what historically has happened, but whenever you have a question, if there's something we want to bring them in
Yeah.
for, we'd reach out. and-
So if the article's obvious or can be answered by the liaison, then there's no need. In the spring, we have the benefit of the all-day meeting where we hear from fire, police, schools, and that covers like a lot of and sometimes some of the other big articles, so there is no need. But sometimes they come back anyway because there's changes or there's more questions. But largely, a bunch of them will get covered by the town manager because they're so-called sponsored by the select board, and she usually will come in once to cover those. So generally, I think if I was a proponent of an article, I'd want to show up, and it's your chance to give a prequel to the town meeting and find out what questions people have. So I would say if you're a liaison and your department has an article, we should reach out and just see if they're interested in coming
It's fair.
in general
Okay.
to
Yeah,
see.
even if we think it's kind of an easy vote,
Then it could be quick.
maybe they have something they want to,
And
tell
it,
us
and
about.
it does, let them
yeah, it gives them an opportunity
and
to,
get it some exposure to, questions or preview of what they might hear at town
Okay,
meeting.
that makes sense.
It's not quite possible to have every department in that has a budget at the annual town meeting, so we don't generally do those, but if we have specific questions on them, we can get those answered. And then, this town meeting is just so much fewer that, but usually there's enough zoning or something that we need planning people here or something.
Okay.
So I guess we should probably, maybe at the next meeting, try and just march through the warrant.
Through the
and try
warrant, yeah.
and,
that's fair.
because it was a little early last time to do that, but then try and make arrangements for the other stuff.
Excellent.
Okay, so
And-
plan to do that Monday?
That's
You look
what I
like
would
you're about to have a
suggest.
comment. Oh, okay, unless there aren't any comments, we can get out on time.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn? Bradley?
Leslie, second.
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Non-debatable motion.
Brant, yes.
Chimala, yes.
Leslie, yes.
OJ,
Looking
yes.
at you. You're-
We are adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
Westborough TV.